Hey, it's Sean Fox, and another month now of the vinyl vlog known as the Vinyl Frontier. I've got Craig Lowry with me today, and one of the things, like last month, I talked about the cleaning, the proper cleaning ways of getting vinyl really, really nice and clean, especially if you're buying a lot of used vinyl. I buy a lot of used vinyl, but there's a reason why I buy used. One, less expensive than a lot of the reissues and stuff like that. However, there's another big reason that some of the original vinyl, when it was pressed back in the day, whether it was 60s, 70s, even the early 80s, before there were CDs, vinyl was actually mastered a specific way for analog because the needle is bouncing around on those grooves.
Right.
It's supposed to be that way. When CDs came about, a whole different style of mastering came because then they had to turn this analog sound into digital.
Well, everything changed once CDs and digital came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for a while there, it was kind of competing, vinyl and CD together, but it wasn't long before the CD really took over, not just because it was supposed to be perfect sound,
Yeah.
but it's also really, really convenient.
Right.
It's just a disc.
Well, and in the car, you can't listen to, obviously, vinyl in the car.
You could. There were players back in the 60s that you could do that
Right,
with. Didn't
but
make a lot of
not
sense.
many.
Yeah. It was
one
possible.
bump.
Yeah. Actually, just 10 feet on any road.
Yeah, right.
But one of the reasons I was going to be talking about the resurgence of vinyl, which is really, really cool, one of the warnings is that a lot of people don't realize. A lot of companies are pressing vinyl again, new, and reissuing all those classic albums that we grew up with.
Right.
And a lot of times when it says 180-gram vinyl, what that really means, it's thicker vinyl, which is good. A thicker piece of vinyl will always sound better than those thinner ones, which really came out in the 80s. But unless they actually say mastered for vinyl, a lot of times these records are actually the digital masters being pressed. And that, a lot of people who are just getting into the resurgence once again, a lot of people who are buying some of this new stuff, they're like, man, it doesn't sound as good as I thought it would because you're expecting analog sound.
Yeah. Now, are they charging less price for some of the stuff that isn't specifically saying, no, they're charging the same thing?
Same price. In fact, they're not even putting anything on there saying, by the way, this isn't mastered for vinyl, so it's going to sound like crap.
So make sure it says mastered for vinyl.
Yes. In fact, well, like one of the first ones I noticed with a record store here in town, I found a brand new reissue of Pearl Jam's No Code album.
Great album.
And 180-gram thick, a gatefold. It's got everything in it. But the sticker on it says remastered for vinyl. And Pearl Jam, being who they are, they never let go of vinyl, even back in the days when vinyl was all but dead. It was never dead, by the way. It just was pressed in a lot less numbers than it used to be.
Right. Well, a lot of the tape companies and whatnot, the analog studios went out of business.
Yeah.
Because of the digital age.
Well, there's the computers recording everything. So it wasn't really until the last maybe 10 years or maybe a little bit less that bands started recognizing the fact that it doesn't sound as good as it did back in the day.
It doesn't.
Foo Fighters.
Sound City.
Yeah.
Is a great example.
Excellent documentary. But when Dave talks about recording, even the back and forth documentary about the Foo Fighters,
right?
He wanted to record on tape again. One of the pitfalls of recording on tape is that it gets expensive because if you screw up, you can't really. If you can record over it, but there's going to be a generation lost,
right?
And so you lose that. So you have to go in really, really clean. You have to be rehearsed. You have to know what you're doing so that you can lay it down.
Isn't that what bands are supposed to be doing anyway?
Yeah.
Isn't that what it means to be in a band?
Kinda.
You and I could be musicians because of the technology we have, like what we use here, Adobe Audition, which we use for production. You can do multi-tracks on that.
Yeah.
So we could put together our own band and record stuff and make it sound perfect with edits and all that, where with tape, even when I started in radio running off of tape machines, reel-to-reel machines for phone calls or whatever, you had to cut and splice tape.
Yep.
So you had to make sure you didn't want to do that all the time because it was such a pain.
Right. But I mean, it was even back then when they were recording on tape, albums on tape, they were doing the same thing. They were cutting the splices along tape. But again, it's expensive. That tape is really, really expensive. So every time you're cutting a piece out of it, you're losing money that you put into that thing. No matter
Think
what.
about, when Queen was recording Bohemian Rhapsody. They said they almost lost that because of all the tracks they had on that, and the tape was getting so thin that they almost lost that entire recording. We would have never heard Bohemian Rhapsody if they would have continued stretching and making that tape so thin.
All those harmonies.
Yeah.
That's not the whole band. That's just Freddie.
Yeah.
That's Freddie overlaying. So I think there's 12 parts in that harmony.
Right.
That's the kind of stuff that you can do easily with something like this. It's digital, it's track. If you don't like something, if you screw it up, you hit delete.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
Which is why nowadays it's really easy for anybody to record anything. Anybody can record music. In fact, there's programs in things like Adobe and Pro Tools that will lay down the tracks of whatever beat you want for you, and then you do the rest.
Right.
You don't even need a drummer. You didn't need a drummer, and you just got it all done right then and there.
Well, that's where in concert today you can tell the bands that can actually play and are rehearsed and practiced and whatnot, and the bands that are just studio creations and all this digital stuff.
Yeah. So luckily, it's one of the great things about this vinyl.
I'm not dogging digital because there are some good aspects with digital as well.
Aspects for it. Yes. When it comes to sound, I'm very analog.
I know you are.
As Joe Walsh and his album Analog Man, he says it exactly as it is. I'm an analog man.
Well, Neil Young's the same way. He loves analog.
Analog, and I try to explain this, and sometimes I've done it in my blog where I try to pare down exactly what analog is compared to digital. Analog is I'm talking to you. I can feel the vibrations in my voice through my bones in my head. You can hear it through the vibrations of the little thing in your ear just quivering. Right. That's sound. Yeah. Sound waves that you can't see are getting there and bouncing. Same thing when you're recording onto tape, and then even sometimes, back in the early days of 78, Robert Johnson was recording stuff right onto a lacquer. It was a lacquer cut where this thing was just putting all the vibrations of the sound that were being recorded through those mics onto a specific piece.
Isn't it like an acetate or something like that?
Well, back in the day, it wasn't even really an acetate. It would have been like the master.
Ah, okay.
But then once that was finished, and it was just one song aside usually, but if they recorded, they used one disc per recording.
Right.
That thing the needle just bounced and cut everything that it heard and felt. Right. That's real sound.
Yeah.
Today, digital sound on a CD, and they say it's perfect sound. Neil Young and I and several others have figured out that it's not really perfect sound because you actually lose something that digital can't pick up. And digital sound, any computer speak, is binary code. It's a series of ones and zeros meant to program what sound's coming out.
Right.
Vinyl is real vibrations that you're seeing in those grooves that you can hear. Digital sound is binary code.
I think digital has made it too easy to correct mistakes. You're less human if you're correcting mistakes all the time and trying to make it perfect. Well, then you lose the feel.
Right.
You lose the emotion. Because even if you hit a wrong note or something like that, so what? It's just you roll with it and then you react to that.
When you're live.
And that's what creates magic to me in music. Yeah. So
when you're live and you're playing as a band, you're playing somewhere and somebody messes up, that's what they heard, and it's just there. You're live, just the way it is. Plus, it also makes you practice more because you got to be tight if you want to come out that way. And if you're going to play live or if you're going to lay down tracks on tape, like Dave Grohl did, I mean, you got to be rehearsed.
That's why I highly recommend watching the movie Sound City, about the legendary Sound City Studios, where so many legendary albums are played, a lot of which we play on KOKZ. A lot of that stuff, I'd say at least 60 to 70% of some of the stuff we play was recorded at Sound City.
A lot, yeah. Well, all the Fleetwood Mac stuff.
Pat Benatar.
Yep. A lot of that stuff. That Sound City documentary you really got to see.
Foreigner, they recorded a lot at Sound City. So, I mean, it's a lot of good stuff. And it's just amazing to see when you watch that documentary, that movie, you're like, holy cow, who didn't record at Sound City?
Right. And what was weird is the fact that Sound City, for all the years it was used, struggled financially.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe that because all these masterful albums that are Rock and Roll Hall of Fame type records were made there, and that thing just
it was an expensive studio to maintain because tape is not cheap,
right?
And recording an analog, you got to replace probably a lot of stuff in that board. That Neve board probably wasn't cheap to fix.
Oh no, Well, being the fact that it was the only one.
One of a handful, maybe. Yeah.
And that was the only one that was made specifically that way. And what made Sound City Studios so unique is everybody from Fleetwood Mac, anybody who's ever recorded there, anybody who knows anything about acoustics, for whatever reason, you couldn't get that drum sound in that studio through that Neve board anywhere else.
Right.
It wouldn't happen. It couldn't happen. They've tried.
Yeah.
It could only happen in Sound City.
It's just magic.
And it was magic for the time because studios are made a certain way, and certain studios have certain unique traits that others don't, and they're all like that. But Sound City was something of a phenomenon. Everybody who recorded there said, this is out of this earth.
Analog to me, when people record analog and on tape, it just has a much richer, full sound.
I think it's a warmer sound.
Richer, warmer, full, yeah.
And when people say, well, warm isn't a sound, I get that. When you think of a warm sound, like you said, I can't really even describe what I mean by warm other than the fact that you hear it when you're listening to vinyl compared to listening to a CD.
Right.
CD is very clinical. It's binary code. It's putting out perfect binary code. It's not even putting out sound. The computer is reading the binary code to produce a sound.
Right.
Where tape and vinyl, you're actually listening to the actual vibrations of sound that are being recorded.
I can hear a huge difference when I listen to Steely Dan on vinyl as opposed to CD. Or even Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. I can hear a massive difference between the two. So there's certain albums where you can really hear it more than others.
Oh, yeah.
And those are two bands that I really hear the difference.
Right. I follow a lot of vinyl pages on Facebook, and by the way, if you ever want to find one, it won't be hard. There's a ton of them. But a lot of us talk about the fact that certain albums are the perfect way to test out your system or your new system or your new edition, your new speakers. One of which I've always said was Steely Dan's Asia. Because
great album.
Not only a great album, but the sound quality of that thing is amazing.
Yeah.
The production, the mixing, all of that. Look, you probably can't see it. Can you verify?
Well, Walter and Donald were very meticulous about, they have how many different guitar players come in and record on tape, and they would choose which one they would want.
Right.
So very meticulous anyway, and then combining that with analog, it's just incredible.
Even though they've remastered so many of these great albums, like all the Steely Dan stuff, and even Asia was remastered on how many times.
Yeah.
And they all sound great when you're listening to them in your system. It's a completely different sound when you've got a nice, clean piece of vinyl and listening to Asia that way, because it's a fuller sound. It surrounds you more than the clinical binary code of a CD. And personally, if you're listening to music or if you're a big rock and roll fan, rock and roll was meant to kind of go against the grain. Rock and roll was not supposed to be classical music. It was not supposed to be perfect.
Right.
Rock and roll was supposed to be a little bit more dangerous, and that's how it started out.
Yeah.
With the resurgence of vinyl, it has brought a lot of people back to vinyl, which is great. It's brought a lot of young people who never really they weren't even in the generation that vinyl was coming out. A lot of people that I've talked to of a certain age, or at least like millennial or at that range, even younger, their moms and dads weren't even growing up on vinyl.
Right?
I know. I just go...
Yep.
But when they get into it now, they're finding something completely different. And I'm feeling and seeing on the internet everywhere, when we're talking about music and releases and all these albums, the sound quality is changing things for these millennials who are used to downloading something. For instance, besides vinyl, we'll skip this for a second. There's so many different new files to listen to music now. It used to just be MP3.
Yeah.
And MP3s, you could basically make a 96K, 128, 256, 320. 320 kilobytes per second was the best quality, the largest file an MP3 could give you. An actual WAV file, like if I were to record something from a vinyl or a CD right into the computer, that's a WAV file. That's a little over 1,400 kilobytes. Now think about the quality of a 320 kilobyte MP3. You just shaved 2/3 of the sound off of that music.
Right.
And people don't realize that. And a lot of people don't care. And a lot of people don't really hear the difference because they just want to hear the music, the song that they like. People who are a little bit more quality, more of a quality ear, they're hearing things. One of the first things I noticed, I played a Welcome to My Nightmare album from Alice Cooper on vinyl, and I had a CD queued up the same way. Started them both at the same time so I could switch between inputs to see what the difference was. I could hear breaths being taken between singing.
Sure.
And when cymbals were hit, you heard a crash that rang out. On a CD, those breaths were almost there. Almost there. The cymbals would crash, but they wouldn't completely ring out. They would kind of... When you take a 320 kilobyte rip of MP3s, all of those nuances that we hear with our human ears are gone.
Yeah.
They're just gone.
Can you tell that he's the vinyl guy in the building? I mean...
I'm old school. I grew up listening. My dad still has a ton of records. We've always listened to records, and we all collect them.
I think the new generation coming out, and I think a lot of people this day and age are more apt to choose quality. I think people are getting there that they want quality. They're willing to pay for quality as opposed to quantity, and cheaping themselves out of the product. And I think we're seeing a lot of that with food. We're certainly, I think, seeing a lot of that with adult beverages, and I think we're starting to see a lot of that now with music. And people want quality.
It's coming back around that people do want like quality, and the creators of the MP3 killed it. They did. They killed it. They did not re-up the whatever it is, the licensing for MP3s.
Right.
So computers that come out after that, chances are maybe that computer still has Windows Media or whatever it is. It might still have an MP3 version in there. But it won't be long before you won't be able to see any of that stuff. There won't be really MP3 players anymore. They said there are so many other ways to listen to music now without losing so much sound because you got FLAC files, full lossless audio codec, I think. FLAC files, there's like the
You better make sure that's right.
It's something, it's really close. If it's not codec, it's another word. But those files do the same thing that MP3s did, making them smaller that you could transport, but it wouldn't shave off music. So it's almost like a zip file.
Yeah, right.
You put something in a zip file, you can send it through an email. When they open it, then it opens up everything that you needed. But if you try to send everything all in one email, it wouldn't do it. It would bog it down. So there's so many different ways now that you can listen to music digitally and not have to lose the sound quality. The MP3 player, the people who created it just
Can I go back to DAT tapes?
Oh, yeah. I completely forgot about the DATs.
I'm sure everybody else did too.
Yes.
Yes.
You said that, and a lot of people just go, DAT?
What's a DAT tape?
Yeah.
Look it up. They weren't around long.
No, they weren't.
No.
People who got into it early bought a player, and for a while you could actually buy not vinyl, but buy real albums on DAT.
We have some DAT players in the building yet.
Still, yeah.
Yes.
I remember seeing them. I think they were.
That's how we used to get. Well, that's how we used to get commercials.
Yeah, or through DATs.
We get either that through DATs, or we'd have to put stuff on DATs, and that's what we give them to clients or whatnot. Just put them on DAT tapes.
I know in the Quad City area where I was growing up, and when I first got into radio, Dwyer and Michaels, the morning show on a rock station, they recorded all their shows on DAT.
Right.
Because it's digital recording, so it wasn't a full WAV file that was taking up a whole lot of tape.
Yeah.
So you could record a lot of information on small bits of tape on these things. And it was all digital. The tape was able to take on the binary code, and that's how that all worked. That did not last long at all. Just like the mini discs.
Yeah, right.
The mini discs didn't last either.
Now let's shift back to vinyl. Let me ask you a question here and get your opinion on this, because a lot of the artists that I like, especially, I'm a huge Noel Gallagher fan. I was a huge Oasis fan. I'm a huge Noel Gallagher fan, and he's putting out his third solo album now.
He's the sane brother, right?
He's the talented brother, as I like to say, the sane brother. Yes, he's the one that writes all the stuff.
If Liam sees this, he's going to be so ticked.
I don't care. Whatever. But Noel has put out all of his 3 solo albums on vinyl. Now, would that be good quality depending on the grit and all that? I mean, we were talking about the older stuff being remastered and put on vinyl. It's got to have that tag on it. What if it's a brand new album?
It all depends on if the artist is paying attention.
Does it say it? He's somebody that would be.
I would think so.
Like a Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
Because he's a big vinyl guy and remembers those days.
Yep.
So probably take comfort in the fact that
some of the new records of bands that want stuff on vinyl, for the reason of the sound quality, are probably pretty vigilant about how they're being mastered.
I think it depends on the artist.
Yes. And honestly, how powerful the record company that they're with is. If they're just trying to get stuff out, get it out there, chances are they're probably recording it digitally.
Yeah.
And then pressing it on CD and getting it out.
See, Noel, he's on his own label.
Yeah. Well, then he's probably paying attention to everything.
Right. So I was just asking that question because we were talking about the remasters of some of the classic albums, but some of the newer stuff.
The new stuff, if they're paying attention to
maybe
these
do
bands,
some research on the artist about
that was going to be one
their
of my next
relationship
points,
with the vinyl age, and do they remember, are they informed?
Yeah.
Obviously.
The new bands who are wanting their stuff put on vinyl and they're requesting it, and a lot of times they get to say how many units they want on vinyl, how many units on CD.
Right.
The new bands who want stuff on vinyl want it for a reason. Not because people are buying vinyl, but because vinyl sounds better. There's more reason to put it on there. So chances are some of the newer bands that are putting out their new music on vinyl, it's probably going to be safe that it will sound good. I can't say for sure on all of it,
right?
Because there's going to be the possibility that somebody's not paying attention.
That there might be an artist like, hey, everybody's talking about vinyl. Let's just
press 100,000 copies on vinyl, and that's all they say.
And then they're going to say, oh, they're so cool. They're going back to the vinyl thing.
Right.
I mean, like, is there ways to check on that, the quality as far as what?
Yes and no.
Okay.
When you walk into a record store, I know places like Barnes and Noble is selling vinyl. They have new and reissues. I'm flipping through those things, and I see some that will have the kind of gold 180-gram sticker on it. And if you read it, it says, ultimate record, the way music was supposed to be heard, high definition, premium virgin vinyl, pressing for super fidelity. The next thing you can do for your stylus and your ears, blah, blah, blah. Nowhere did it say mastered for vinyl. It's one of those things where it's trial and error. You won't know until you play it.
So it's just one of those things where you get a check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because these things...
And we're not ripping on Barnes & Noble at all. I mean,
no.
They have got some... But it's pretty good
Quality
quality stuff there.
That's one of the places that you can find a lot of new vinyl in a store. Most places you can't find that stuff, so people go online. But a store that carries new vinyl, you can find a lot of it.
That's cool that they do that.
It's not anything against Barnes & Noble because they are just putting the product out there as opposed to they're not in charge of quality control as to who recorded what and how.
I think it's kudos that they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
Look for the stickers that may say something. Anything that's new will have some sort of a hype sticker on it about the 180-gram or 220-gram, which is even thicker. Something will probably tell you that it's mastered for vinyl. If it doesn't, before you buy it, Google it. Start looking it up. That specific title and artist. Start finding out if that vinyl that was put out was actually mastered for the vinyl release or if it was just from the digital masters that they pressed, because there is a huge difference. Back in the late 70s and 80s, vinyl was coming out in from CBS and some other ones. There was a thing called digital recording, master sound, audiophile pressing. Everybody was buying those thinking, oh, this is going to be the ultimate sound quality. And it was very clean, but there was not a whole lot of bottom.
Right.
There wasn't a whole lot of fullness in it. And so they were thinking, that's the way it's supposed to sound.
Right.
And when you played the original record that wasn't reissued by CBS with master sound, it sounded like it was supposed to. That was a digital recording that they pressed on vinyl. And that was happening back in the 80s.
Wow.
People weren't realizing it. And people were spending a lot of money on these thinking they were the best quality vinyl.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of the same thing now. People are willing to spend a bunch of money on these new records that are coming out that are reissues, and they're not knowing any better. I will say this, too, when it comes to what you're listening to. It also matters on what you're listening to it on.
Yeah, I knew you were going to go this route. I knew you were going to go this route.
And I do not.
Now, hey.
I know. I do
Take a breath. Take a breath. Careful now. Just listen. Some people now. I'm just going to say. I'm going to say this as a disclaimer, okay, for you. Okay. Not everybody is educated on this stuff as you are.
I'm aware.
Don't rip on them.
This is why I do this, though.
I understand that, and that's good.
To educate.
That being said,
yes,
We relax.
Anybody who's buying vinyl, great. Good on you for doing that.
Here we go.
You should. If you got a turntable for Christmas, great.
Careful.
Great.
Careful now.
If you got
Just don't say the name. Just
if you got a suitcase player for Christmas and the speakers are built into it so you can play your record, fine. However, when it comes to the quality of those things, and this isn't just me talking, saying I don't like it because of this.
And if you like it, that's great.
That's great.
That's fine.
It absolutely is fine because it's all about listening to vinyl.
Right.
And when it comes to listening to vinyl, it really is having something to do with vinyl as opposed to an MP3 file that you don't see, you don't feel, you don't taste.
You actually can touch the record.
Yes.
Open it up like the picture book that they are, which is awesome.
Listening to a record, there is a much more intimate experience because you have to touch it. And you have to be careful touching it because you don't want to put your fingers on the grooves because the oils in your fingers gunk up in there. The dust will collect and it will ruin the sound quality. You want to hold it by the sides. Put it on, drop the needle slowly. When it's done, you have to get up. You got to take the needle off, flip it over, do it again. All while you're listening to this, checking out all the credits and the song lyrics and the pictures. It's a much different experience than anything else, even a CD. They still have it. They have the picture, much smaller. You know, the song lyrics, you got to get a magnifying glass to read them. But listening to vinyl is good because you're having an experience with the music. You're not live at a concert, but you're having an experience with the music because you're touching it. You have something.
And I think
to
what you're saying too, depending on what player you use, there are other avenues. If you really want to enhance the experience even more, there's other avenues you can go by expanding. It takes some cash to do that, but
it takes a little more cash.
If you want a better quality, there are ways you can invest in that quality.
Right. What I wanted to say about the ones who get the suitcase players. It's great that you're listening to them. That's awesome. But if you're telling yourself, this is a lot of fun, and I really get what Shaw means. I get to hold the record. I get to mess with it, touch it. But if you're sitting there thinking, this doesn't sound better than a CD, there's a reason, and it has a lot to do with that player. Mm-hmm. The player was inexpensive and basic for somebody who's just going to get into it. It's kind of like when you want to learn how to play guitar. You don't go out and buy a Gibson Les Paul for your first guitar. No one really goes out and buys a DD something Martin for their very first guitar to learn on. They buy something inexpensive so they can learn on it. And then when they get better and they realize they want better quality,
then you invest more into that entity and product.
It's the same way with record players. And I'm not just saying that now. That's the way it's been forever, as long as there's been record players. There's been better record players than others, better turntables than others. There are still great turntables out there being made inexpensively. I'm a big fan of the Project debuts. They're heavy. They've got carbon fiber tone arms. And a lot of times when you order them, they're ready to go. They already have a cartridge and needle. They're probably Audio-Technica all set up.
Yeah.
Those things you can get for under $300, sometimes closer to $250. And for someone who wants to have a little bit better quality in their sound system, that might be a way to go where you can easily save that up faster. However, you will not be able to get one of those turntables, set it down, plug it in, put the needle on the record, and listen, because you're going to go,
well, you need speakers.
Well, no, you can't just hook up speakers to a turntable either.
Oh, really?
You got to have the amplifier.
Yes.
You got to have the amplifier or the receiver.
See, I knew that. I was leading you to that.
Yes, you got to have something else that's going to turn that sound electronic so it can come back out and go through
the
speakers.
Amplifier makes a huge difference as well.
Yes. And you can even buy really, really old vintage ones, which is actually a big movement now. A big movement is trying to find those old vintage silver-faced.
Oh, yeah.
Those are nice. They're still solid state. If you go even further back, you can get the ones with tubes. The tubes are really, really nice. You want to talk about a warm sound.
Oh, yeah.
It's warm because those tubes are actually hot.
Yes.
They're warm.
Yes.
And that's,
I like when you turn them on and you can smell the tubes warming up.
You can smell the electricity.
Well. Yes.
You can actually smell it. It's
See,
like
what I
ozone
need,
or something.
And we've talked about this too. My parents, in their house up in St. Paul, they have an old RCA. It's the big console thing that opens in the top.
Piece of furniture.
It's from 1972, and it's got you can put double vinyl on it, so it'll drop one at a time. It's very cool. You either have a 45 on it, or whatever size you want. It's got the 8-track player in the top, and the stereo sounds great, and it's tubes, and it sounds fantastic. All it needs is a new needle. So the day I've already told them, I already state claim to it because they said, what are we going to do with this stuff? I'm like, what are you going to do with this? I'm like, I'll take it. Yeah. It's in perfect shade. The finish is immaculate on it because my mom took care of it. She pledged it and took care of it and all that.
Right.
So it's in really good shape. It is so heavy, though. It's going to take like 3 guys to get this thing out of the house.
This was a piece of furniture.
It sounds amazing, though. It sounds incredible.
I think it probably also has 4 to 6 speakers built into it.
It does.
I think.
Yeah.
And the woofers in those things are like 15.
I know. I used to crank up the radio when I was washing my car in the driveway and open the windows in the living room.
Oh, yeah. You can
and it sounded great. I could hear the window shaking because it had so much bass and bottom to it.
My grandma has one, too, that I think was early to mid-'60s that luckily, I believe, my mom said that her brother and her sisters, I don't think any of them want them. So when it comes time, it could be that I may get that, and I'm looking forward to it because that thing sounds amazing.
The speakers have like a greenish, shaggish carpeting.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 70s. It's 72. It's 70s.
Yeah.
But it sounds amazing. It's cool to have, and all it needs is a new needle. I'll have to take the back off and vacuum it out and clean it out and whatnot. But the sound on it, I remember my parents listening to vinyl on it all the time, and just the sound on it was incredible.
And that's where you find the love of vinyl, but not just the vinyl, but the music, because you learned listening to it the way it was supposed to be.
My dad listened to a live Elvis record on it.
Oh, sure.
All the time. And just hearing that, you felt like you were in the concert when you'd crank it up.
Well, those speakers in those consoles were usually set up so they were angled in certain ways, so it would fill the room. Mm-hmm. This was way before Bose.
Oh, yeah.
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 And they'd sound amazing.
Yeah. I'll have to take a picture. Next time I'm back at their house, I'll take a picture of it.
That would be cool because our boss Jack is a big vinyl guy, and he loves old radios and vintage stuff. He likes to work in this stuff. He knows how
refurbishes all that stuff.
Yeah, he's found some really, really cool old pieces that he's been redoing too, and they sound cool.
I told him about that RCA, that console thing, and he goes, "Oh man, take a picture of that. I want to see that."
Yeah,
I don't think the top's been open in about 10 years.
I've actually had like 3 of those. 3 of those. And I don't have any more because I don't have room for them.
Yes.
Which is sad. I still want a good one that I can hold on to and my wife.
This one I will be hanging on to and taking care of and making sure is in tip-top shape because I think it's one of the better consoles to listen to vinyl on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sure it is. So the vinyl people who are just getting into it, if you're thinking to yourself, well, this is fun, but there's no way this sounds better than CD. There's a reason you've got to upgrade. If you really want to experience the good sound of vinyl and why people say it's better, you got to spend a little bit more money and get that system that's going to give you that quality.
Yeah,
it's fun to listen to it on the suitcase players. In fact, even in the 60s, the kids who were getting into the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, they weren't listening to them on nice turntables. They were listening to them on suitcase players.
Oh, yeah. We had one as a kid. That was my mom's. It was a sky blue case.
Yeah.
And only played 45s.
Yeah.
And we'd listen to that all the time. My brother would listen to the Guess Who's American Woman on it over
you told me
and
the story
over
about that.
and over and over and over and over
How many
until
times?
I was 3 in 1979. Went over there after about the 900th time of him playing it. Walked over to and I went, "You're gonna cringe."
Yeah.
And scratched the hell out of it until it wouldn't play anymore.
The fact that you're still alive right now.
Oh, he's 5 years older than me. It was a little bit of a beating.
Well, that's why you remember it.
To this day, when I play that song, that image in my head
of my brother beating the crap out of me.
No, of me going.
I know that's horrible.
But that was my mom's player. That was her suitcase-ish carrying player. I think it was an RCA player as well, and it's in a sky. We still have it too.
Do you?
Yeah, I'll have to bring it back. It's in a sky blue suitcase-ish kind of thing.
It's one of those things that you can listen to music and have it sound great. This is also in the 60s when the kids were listening to this top 40, Rolling Stones, Beatles, things like that. It came out of a mono speaker. It was a mono player, And it was fine because it sounded pretty much like they heard it out of the radio. Yeah. One speaker in the car and all that
she
kind of
still
stuff.
has all her Beatles vinyl, too, original from those days.
Really?
Early 60s, yeah.
Will she put me in her will, you think?
No.
I should probably meet her once, huh?
Yeah.
To ask that, I should probably meet her at least once.
You're not getting them. Nice try.
But this has been kind of the quick crash course on vinyl and some of the pitfalls, but some of the great ways of listening to it and getting back into it.
See, it's fun sitting here talking to you about it because I grew up with all that too. My parents listened to vinyl. That's all they listened to. So getting your perspective on this and educating people today, there are avenues. I think it's great that people are starting off with the smaller players. Mm-hmm. And then if you want and you do some research, you could really invest in that and then really gain the experience that we grew up with.
Yeah.
And you still continue to. You have a great turntable at home.
And when it comes to that, and I didn't always have a great turntable.
Yeah.
You know, I had to build up to that too because I wanted that sound that I knew was already there.
Right.
I needed that, so I had to put something together. And don't be afraid of looking at anything that's used. A lot of times, garage sales.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't
Some
want.
People don't
the
know
clutter.
what they have.
No, they don't. So you can lowball them big time. Just saying.
You've done that before, I take it?
No.
Yes.
I have never walked in and said, "Hey, this is a great stereo. It's too bad people don't want these anymore. I'll give you $20." I've not ever maybe done that.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, you can buy used stuff that's great quality and not have to spend a whole lot of money and get that experience that I'm talking about of the real vinyl sound. You can do it that way as well. Lots of different ways. But look at old stuff, look at used stuff, make sure it is, as long as it turns on and puts sound, you are good to start, you know, and it's pretty easy to go from there. But the warning is about vinyl. If you're buying the new releases or if you're buying new reissues, just do some investigating. Don't spend a whole bunch of money on something that probably wasn't mastered for vinyl because you are going to hear the difference. You're going to go, wow, I'm not getting what I should out of this.
And then you're going to get disappointed and you go, well, I don't believe in the vinyl stuff.
And then you won't buy vinyl and you won't keep collecting it.
Right.
That's the big warning that I'm trying to push here because you won't have a chance to really get yourself involved if you're buying a crap piece of vinyl.
Right.
So do some investigating. That's what the Google machine is for. You can find all that information. Specifically, if you're looking for a specific record that you don't know has been reissued yet, or if it's been put on vinyl lately, you can find all that kind of stuff by Googling it and just getting that stuff. So
that console, my father has already told me that if I want to go up there with a truck this summer, I can have it.
Really?
Let's go grab
That'd be the way to go. Yeah. I can't wait to get the one that might
break my back trying to lift that thing.
No, they're not supposed to be.
It's going to be worth it, though.
Yeah.
It's so amazing. It's been sitting in the same spot in their living room since 1973.
Guess what?
What?
You'll be able to see what the color carpet was supposed to be like when you move that.
It'll
be a big difference.
It's the carpet that they put in 1973. They're remodeling their house right now, but it's still shag.
Yeah.
It's the original flame orangish, yellowish shag.
I grew up with that color, too, in my house.
Yeah.
Flame orange shag. Yeah, that was the thing.
And it's in perfect shape.
Really?
They've taken care of it. They take care of their stuff. They've taken care of their house. So, but it's been sitting there since.
But for years and years and years, whether it's vacuuming and walking on or whatever, there's going to be wear. And the only place you'll see where that carpet looked like brand new
is underneath that console.
That's where you're going to lift it up and everybody's going to go,
ooh. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think I helped. We moved it once for something. I don't remember, but I think it may have only been moved once.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to be great to get it back and get it working. And it still works. The radio still works. The turntable still works. It just needs a new needle.
And by the way, anybody who has the older stuff and is looking, they still make needles. They still sell them. Might be harder to find locally, but if you're in a local area, especially a metro, you can usually find someplace they might have them. Or
there are places online that,
you can get them through Amazon easy, but needledoctor.com I think is a great place because I don't care how obscure your unit is, you can probably find it in needledoctor.com.
Those are guys that are just as passionate as you.
Yeah, and they've got the stuff. So,
all right,
that is my big warning for vinyl collectors, and at the same time, good job. Keep with it. Stick with it. But thanks, Craig, for being in on this vlog today.
Thanks for having me.
We will do this like once a month because I don't want to kill everybody with what because I do get passionate about it. And sometimes I'm afraid one of these times I'm going to be here by myself and the camera's going to be there. And I'm going to be so passionate about it that I'm going to be like shaking. I'm going to look like an evangelist going, please do
I'm keeping
the right thing for your vinyl.
You need somebody in here to keep you on the rails.
Kinda.
That's why I'm here, is to keep you on the rails.
There is something to be said about all the information that I have, that I love, that I always think about daily and night. Haven't tried to get it out streamlined.
Really? You think about it daily and nightly?
I kind of do, yeah.
Really?
I dream about vinyl. I do.
You're like the Rain Man of vinyl.
A little bit. Steely Dan's
Let's
on.
wrap it up. Wrap it up.
Steely Dan's on.
This is Sean Fox. I'm Craig
Steely
Lowy.
Dan.
Say goodbye, Sean.
Bye, Sean.